Hello, everybody. I'm Rachel Smith, Chief Executive of ExchangeWire, and we're here at Cannes 2025 on the DoubleVerify yacht, interviewing CEO of DoubleVerify, Mark Zagorski. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
And Ciarán O'Kane, General Partner from First Party Capital and co-founder of ExchangeWire. That's such a mouthful. Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
What I wanted to chat with the two of you about today is tech innovation and investment. Obviously, there's been a lot of news in the press about DoubleVerify's investment in First Party Capital, which is an adtech investment fund for early stage adtech startups. It's exciting times. We've had a lot of conversations over the lifetime of First Party Capital with Ciarán about the value of growing the adtech industry with this fresh wave of innovation. But my first question, and I'm going to come to you first on this, Mark, is what is the sort of strategic approach from DoubleVerify's perspective on M&A and investment in the industry? And what are some of the key things that you were focused on with this investment in investment capital?
Yeah. So, we've got pretty straightforward pieces when it comes to M&A. And it needs to do, when we think of it, it needs to do one of three things. Either it expands our geographic profile, an acquisition, it accelerates our product roadmap, or it pulls us into an adjacency or an adjacent product that our sales team can sell into their basket of goods, and it makes sense for us. And, the acquisitions we've done, 4 acquisitions over the last 5 years, have all fallen into one of those buckets. And most recently, they've been in the adjacency front, which is doing things that make sense for DB. We acquired a company called Sybids around 2 years ago, a company called Rockerbox just earlier this year. And they extended us from verification into optimization and then proof for outcomes measurement. And I think that was kind of an expansion of our purview. Looking ahead, we look for acquisitions in those same areas. And I think one of the things that was exciting about the First Party Capital investment was it gives us access to not only companies that are doing things different than we are, but that have that spark. And I come from the startup universe. I was a small company, and that's how Ciarán and I met many years ago. And I understand that as you get bigger, it gets harder to kind of incubate that spark. And we've launched lots of our own products, do so, but there's so many great ideas out there. And I think having access to those via an investment partner is a core part of filling out that part of our strategy, which is how do we find companies that falls into the buckets?
Yeah, that sounds super interesting. Ciarán, from FPC's point of view, obviously that's music to your ears because you're always talking about wanting to grow the next wave of innovation in the industry. What is the DV investment meant for you, not just in practical terms, but in how has it added value to the portfolio of companies that you're investing in and the funds that you're launching?
Yeah, I mean, I think DV is at the coalface of changing space right now. There's so much macro trends going on from everywhere. From AI to signal, media bifurcation. There is a repositioning, if you will, of ad tech, and I think DV are really leaning into it. Like, you look at the acquisitions they made, right? They bought Sybids for custom algorithm, bought Rockbox for measurement. And they've basically turned, they're essentially a brand safety company first, but they've added loads of other signals, right? Contextual, the partnerships that like Lumen and others, they're able to sort of collate this into what we call the super signal aggregator, right? That's our own sort of thesis on it. But, they're leaning into the seismic shifts in the space. And for us, for an investment from a type of company that understands that innovation needs to be like front of mind, right? Especially in this industry because it moves so quickly. The other reason is that I think that the product team at DV are really good, and we have some great discussions between our companies and DV. We're already like integrating some of the companies into the DV stack. I think that like a company like DV as well is distribution, right? They're a global business. They are in every country in the world, and it's very easy for a company in the portfolio to work with Mark's company, and if it fits a capability, then the ability for us to kind of push it out into market is so much easier. So those are loads of different, those are key reasons. But also the fact is that Mark and Doug and Todd are ad tech people, right? Like, they live and breathe this stuff. And they've been through the mire, so they understand what you need to do at the very early stage and what you need. And I think that investment it's more than just money. It's the partnership we're going to have over the next 10 years, which is really important to us and the companies in our portfolio.
Yeah, and I guess it's the confidence, right, that it gives you to be able to then talk about what's happening with the FPC companies in a wider context. You know, this is where we're getting backing, support, investment from. These are the relationships that we've got. Mark, from your point of view, you know, you said that wanting to grow innovation or wanting to be part of that innovation, which can be difficult when you're a larger, more established company, was a key thing. What else might be some of the things that you were thinking about with regards to investment? And where I'm going here is you're a publicly listed company, so obviously you've got to justify everything you're doing to your shareholders. How are you explaining this to them as a good investment strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the one thing that we've always looked at in our M&A strategy is we've always partnered with the companies before we acquire them. So we build solutions together, we go to market together, we get clients together. Because that's how you learn about it, right? I've always laughed at these businesses who are like, oh, well, we sold to company X because they had 3 meetings with us and they loved what we were doing and we fit into their strategy. I'm like, oh my God, both of you are dumb, right? Like that was a bad decision on your part because you don't know what the culture you're getting into. And it's a bad decision on the buyer's part because they don't know what they're actually buying. And I think part of the thesis around what first party capital is doing is like, no, we want you to spend time with the companies. We want you to have access together. We want you to build partnerships together. So then when you actually move to the point where, hey, it may make sense for a transaction, you both know what you're getting into. Yeah. And I think that is one of the cool things about this is it provides access, it provides relationship. And it doesn't mean that every company in the portfolio is an automatic fit or the one customer or your one partner in that sector that we're going to work with. But what it does do is it creates less friction in creating those relationships. It creates, there is a level of understanding of who's backing them and knowing that these are probably good companies. They almost get like the imprimatur of this guy who's been in ad tech longer than me, so that's all good. And I think that's what's, how we explain it to our partners and investors, which is like, this is just smart. It's a smart down payment on something we may do in a much bigger way, but gives us access and it keeps us from making mistakes that other companies make.
Yeah, so it's almost like first book, if you like, some possible acquisitions or strong partnerships down the line. And then I guess it's got a de-risking sum to it too. It's like if you're going to invest, let's know what you're investing in and let's get sort of close to the people that you're investing with. Absolutely. Ciarán, a word from you on, the difficulties of raising funds in Europe and how much part of the fundraising landscape is versus the US. Fantastic to have the backing of a US publicly listed company in the fund. Has that helped conversations that you're having with onward investors and some European investors?
Yeah, I think it gives a stamp of approval from a publicly listed company. It definitely helps and the conversations are a little bit easier. I think that we first started, we were like trying to prove out the concept, right? An operator fund that's got ad tech people running it. I mean, it was difficult to get institutional money. And to be fair, I mean, DV, we were only started, so we took checks from like ad tech insiders like Mark. And then, I think once we proved out the model and these companies now have, real product fit, they're doing well, they're growing fast, they're making money, they're actually tackling real problems. I mean, that's one of the things we always look for. What problem are you solving in the space? Like, there's lots of chat about AI this week. You're drowning in it. Like, what does that mean? People just have kind of devalued the word. But I still think at the core, a good ad tech company is solving a specific problem, whether it's measurement or targeting or privacy or a new channel that you have to figure out or format business or whatever. They need to be solving a specific problem for an agency, for a brand, for a publisher. And I think that's, that's why the relationship with DV works, because the companies we have are fitting into their view of the world. Because the world's completely changed, right? Like, I would love if someone just walked around and asked someone, what is ad tech right now, right? Ad tech used to be SSPs and DSPs and RTB, but it's much bigger, right? You're talking about omni-channel. We're talking about new channels that are popping up. We're talking about a whole new channel in Q&A search, right? That's disrupting the Google business. Yeah. And it's having huge effects across the entire space. I mean, we look at the rise of CTV, where on retail media, people couldn't predict that ages ago. So it's great to have a company that understands that, and that for us is a real stamp of approval, and that's helped other conversation for sure. A lot of generalists are getting confidence that if a $2.5 billion market cap company on a Nasdaq, is it Nasdaq or the New York Stock?
New York side.
On it was saying, no, fantastic, and the NYSE, they have confidence to say, oh, actually, this is a good bet, and we're ad tech people, right? We're not generalists. Like, we eat and drink this industry, and we love it. Like, we look at the problems and how we fix it. And we've all got a good sense of how things work. It's very complicated at the minute. I guess that's the reason why we're such a good bet, in a sense, because we have these insights that we can give to companies, to corporate investors like DV, and help them figure out the world as well, because it's complicated. Like, US, and then there's the rest of it, which is an even bigger mess.
Yeah.
That's a really adequate point too. Is like, one thing to note here is like DoubleVerify is not in the investment business, right? We're in the business, and I think that's why, when we think about what we did with first party capital, it is unique. We didn't go out and say, hey, let's take some of our cash and put it into a fund someplace. Like, we're not in the finance business. We're, anything that we do is about growing our business, and that's what's really unique. And it's funny to me to hear that there's a challenge raising funds for like an operator-driven fund. Like, that is the only one that makes sense. You understand the space here,
but as you know, Mark, ad tech is complicated. Even for general investors, they struggle to see the value. And then you say, well, you do realize that ad tech powers a 1 trillion advertising business and a 5 trillion marketing business. Like, it literally is the infrastructure layer. And then you talk about PayPal. I think it is changing for sure.
So that was going to be my next sort of wave of questions. Let's talk a bit about the tech innovation side. Do you think that the industry is, I feel like I've been talking about it's matured, obviously, a lot. And do you think maybe now it's become an industry that perhaps the average person that's not involved in advertising and marketing can understand a little better? If you start to say to people, advertising technology powers consuming content online, maybe regular people can wrap their head around it. Do you think that is making a change to the sort of perspective of people that might be interested in investing? Do you think as well, question for you, Mark, as well, the ad tech solutions are perhaps a bit more, you're not necessarily looking at only one platform to solve your advertising and marketing problems, right? You need a range of solutions. And so therefore the whole notion of kind of growing the industry means growing the opportunities for those ad tech solutions to connect with yours, to connect with other platforms.
First of all, I think there are no regular people in this industry. We're all insane. Happy being
Only right.
But I do feel like, I don't know if there's a greater understanding of ad tech, but there's a greater understanding of the fact that there need to be solutions that make it simpler, right? And I feel like there are lots of small companies doing lots of things. And what we're trying to do, and I think what those companies are trying to solve specific problems, but what we want to do is bring them together so that, we're addressing what an advertiser wants. So if it's hard for people even in this space to kind of understand what's going on, the complexity. It's even harder for an advertiser who has 15 different priorities. So aligning, those solutions together to solve problems in a very specific but straightforward way, I think makes a ton of sense. And that's, the thesis around DV is if we can bring more and more solutions together to solve problems. You kind of look at it as super signal aggregators, right? We're bringing different, signals together. I think that helps the industry thrive, right? Because what we don't want, and the thing that regular people do understand is that, if too many things are put into one place, too many decisions in one place, then it creates problems, and you have antitrust situations in the U.S. and those things get broken up. So, but it doesn't mean like there's a middle ground between concentration and total fragmentation. And I think that's where we can help solve those problems as a mid-sized company, bringing solutions together, bringing signals together, and having relationships with people like FPC help channel that energy into those spaces. But ultimately, we want to make this easier for everybody, right? There are lots of problems. We shouldn't have to solve them all separately. We should be able to solve them together.
What do you think, Ciarán, about that sort of tech evolution / fragmentation piece, industry maturing, tech solutions, like you just said earlier on, it's no longer just about DSPs and SSPs. Has the fragmentation of technology solutions helped investment conversations, or is it making it, more difficult?
I don't think it's had a major effect. I think what we're seeing, especially from Meta and Google, I call it the PMAXification of open internet, if you want to call it like that. We need to kind of be in step with those guys, right? We want to make the open internet addressable and easy to use, as Mark's point. We don't want 100% of the budgets all going to those infrastructure or those walled gardens. So like we invest for everything, right? We have products that are built on top of Meta and Google. But also I think most of the people here in Canada, most people are kind of like independent ad tech. So they have to think about how we make our buying processes easier. Mark, so you can't just, build stuff in isolation. You really have to put it together. Like you can't have 10, 15 vendors in the supply chain. I think that's what programmatic has been overcomplicated a lot. But I think a simplification is arriving. And I suppose like with sort of AI technology underpinning a lot of the automation and it's simplified the process. We're getting close to that. I think there's a shift going on. And DV is a good example of a company that's evolving. Like a lot of companies are kind of moving that direction. But you're seeing it all over. But there's still blind spots. There's still stuff around measurement, right? Post-cookie, privacy, and especially this part of the world. So there are big problems to solve. And I think I think those conversations make it easier when you talk to ordinary people. Going, we're actually trying to solve some of these issues. Ordinary people I'm talking about, even people in the industry, brands, agencies, etc. So yeah, I think, answer is yes and no.
Succinct answer.
Yeah. Somewhere in the middle.
I'm going to finish up with a final question to you, Mark. If somebody was considering investment in FBC and they're an ad tech company or they're a corporate investor, what would you say that might get them over the line?
I mean, there's no better thesis than having people who understand the space, who are operating in the space, who are close to operators, be the ones who you put your mom roof, right? They have a vested interest. They know exactly what is valuable and what's not valuable. And they've been there before. Like, to me, it's just it's a no-brainer with regard to, like, not just an investment thesis, but for us, a strategic thesis as well. And I think it makes a ton of sense.
Fantastic. Super exciting time to be in ad tech as far as I'm concerned. We've got lots of exciting innovation to look forward to. Thank you very much, Mark. Thanks, Ciarán.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
And thanks, everybody, for watching.